Hello, how are you? Nowadays, many people use sweeteners in their daily lives. They have replaced sugar with sweeteners, thinking about weight loss and health, but they make some mistakes that can harm their health, their weight loss process, and their daily comfort. I've put together for you the 7 main mistakes people make with sweeteners. The 7th is the most dangerous mistake you can make, so it's important that you stay until the end. You won't want to miss it. Before we start, I want to ask you if you use sweeteners in your daily life, and if so, which sweetener do you use and from which brand? Do you buy a specific sweetener or just whichever one is cheaper? Write that down for me. Or if you still usually consume sugar, which type of sugar do you use? Or do you not consume anything at all? There are people who cut out sugar and don't use any sweetener at all. How does that work for you? Write it for me. I'd love to see your comment. And go ahead and leave your like on the video. That's really important to me. In fact, it helps this video reach more people who need it. So if you can, go ahead and leave your like. Let's start with the mistakes because after all, I've picked out the top 7 for you. One of the mistakes is buying a sweetener just by its main ingredient without realizing that sometimes it's mixed with another sweetener in there. And then, for example, someone says, I can't have stevia because it gives me gas. It really doesn't sit well with me. When you check the label, basically, it had a lot of erythritol and just a little bit of stevia. The stevia was just a hint because stevia can have a bitter aftertaste, and often in the industry, they mix it with another type of sweetener. I'm giving this specific example, but sometimes you might be buying cyclamate with saccharin, or you might be buying aspartame combined with some other sweetener. So actually, the most important thing is that you check which sweetener it is, not just by the front label, but turn it around and look at the label which ingredient appears. The one that comes first is always the one there's more of, and you need to check if that's really what you want. Usually 100% stevia is more expensive and has a slightly more bitter taste, which many people don't really like in their daily lives. So pay attention. If it's very sweet, it might not be pure stevia, and that's an important point for you to watch out for. The second mistake is heating up the wrong sweetener. There are sweeteners that shouldn't be exposed to very high temperatures. That's why I always tell you to check the label, because it will be written there. If it's stable for oven or stovetop use, so you can actually cook with it, and that's an important point. Now, another important point is that sometimes you choose a sweetener that isn't necessarily very stable, like aspartame, for example. But let's say you put it in your coffee, the coffee cools down, and then you heat it up in the microwave several times. You're exposing it to high temperatures without even realizing that you're doing it. So that's a very important point. In the case of aspartame, often when we heat it, the molecule breaks down and it ends up with a bitter or metallic taste. So it's not recommended that you heat it. Ideally, if you're going to use the microwave to heat a drink or something similar, you should use the same sweetener you would use for cooking, one that's stable and suitable for recipes exposed to heat, so it maintains its properties. Another very common mistake is people thinking that all sweeteners are the same and will give the same taste and effect on the intestines. Some people end up having not so great experiences with certain sweeteners. There are specific sweeteners that can ferment and cause gas. There are sweeteners like stevia, as I mentioned, that can have a residual aftertaste. Then the person tries one and says, I don't like sweeteners, I'd rather stick with sugar but use less. That's a valid option if you're not diabetic or don't have prediabetes or any condition that really contraindicates it. But remember that there are many types of sweeteners. Some are heat stable, others taste sweeter, some are 100% natural, some have zero absorption, some don't ferment, others do. So it's important to get to know sweeteners better so you can have a more complete understanding. I have a video here called the Sweeteners Guide. I explain more about each one of them, and if you're curious, I'll leave it down here. It's very thorough. I'll leave it here in the description to help you out. Another mistake is thinking that sweeteners can be consumed all day long without limits, and that it won't cause any harm to your health. Besides the issue of the maximum dose of sweetener, which we have to take into consideration, it's not like water. You can't just consume it indiscriminately without any criteria. There's also the matter of the cephalic phase insulin response that occurs when people keep using drops of sweetener all day long. This happens because our body senses that some kind of food is coming in. It thinks that is sweet, so the body thinks it's caloric and signals the pancreas to secrete insulin, and then you might end up feeling hungrier. This usually happens with people who use sweeteners without any control. There are people who, instead of counting the drops, just squeeze it in. It seems harmless. But it can increase hunger and may even worsen this metabolic issue related to insulin for some people, depending on the type of sweetener and the amount used. So once again, it should be used in moderation, like everything in life, and with restraint, right? You should use it at specific times and in a controlled amount. A very common mistake with sweeteners is that people get used to an ultra sweet taste, and gradually they keep increasing the amount of sweetener. Sweeteners are much sweeter than regular white table sugar, we know that. And what happens is that people start to get addicted to this sweet taste. There are people who start adding sweetener to fruit, to yogurt that's already blended with fruit, a naturally sweet flavor, but they add sweetener to make it ultra sweet. So be careful, because sometimes 7 drops turn into 10, and before you know it, you're already putting 20 in your coffee with milk, which is already sweet. So be careful with that, because your body will adapt and start craving more and more. And this will make you want a much sweeter taste. And then when you go to eat something sweet, a naturally sweet fruit won't satisfy your craving for sweetness. You'll need something much more sugary, you know? So try to readjust your palate and always use the smallest possible amount of sweetener, just enough to sweeten your drink or your food. Another mistake is the issue of intestinal discomfort. People use large amounts of polyol sweeteners like xylitol, erythritol, and maltitol, which do have an impact on gut health because they ferment and attract water. So they can even be used as laxatives in some cases, and they have this residual effect. Because since they stay there for a long time and ferment, they attract a lot of water into the lumen, which can cause osmotic diarrhea, intestinal discomfort, bloating, and stomach pain. And there are people who don't even know this, so they say, I don't do well with sweeteners, because they use these in large amounts. Of these, the one that impacts the gut the least is erythritol, so ideally, you should assess your own sensitivity. People who already have irritable bowel syndrome or have some kind of difficulty, a lot of fermentation, a lot of gas, tend not to tolerate it very well. It's worth reconsidering whether it's a good sweetener for you to consume on a daily basis or not. And the most important mistake to watch out for is when people use sweeteners that aren't suitable for the oven or stovetop, for caramelizing, making syrup, pudding, caramel, burnt sugar, using table sweeteners or blends that aren't designed for that. When you do this, when you expose the sweetener to very high temperatures, it can burn, and then it can produce compounds that are irritating to the stomach, can potentially be pro-inflammatory, and have a horrible taste, which can even ruin your recipe. So ideally, if you are going to caramelize, make a syrup, a pudding, or if you want more volume in the recipe to make it fluffier, you should use xylitol. It is the one that behaves best. Even though it doesn't turn golden in the same way a caramel, it gives that caramelized effect. So you can use xylitol with water to achieve the caramel texture, and to add color, you use vanilla. I have a video here on the channel making xylitol syrup, which turns out perfect and is a great option. I just have to give you a warning about xylitol, because xylitol is very toxic to dogs. In fact, it can cause severe hypoglycemia and kill the animals within a few hours. This is very important. If you make any kind of preparation with sweetener, never give it to your pet, okay? This can be very dangerous. So tell me down below if you noticed that you made any of these mistakes and which one you're going to start changing from now on. I would love to see your comment. Remember to like the video. This is very important to me. And to share it with anyone you think will enjoy it or needs it. Let's work together to expand this chain of kindness. That's what I want here with the channel. See you next time. Bye.